Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of GMS Live. My name is Ashley Tucker, and I will be your moderator this evening. Last month, you had a fantastic session with Dr. Mark Bullimore, and he hosted a session on why myopia matters. So because of the staggering projections for the prevalence of myopia and the significant impact myopia has not only on patients' eye health, but on their overall well-being, it is so important that every clinician embraces myopia management as standard of care in their practices. I know from personal experience how challenging it can be to jump right in and start myopia management in just everyday practice, but I can also attest to the fact that it is the most rewarding part of my day. So here with me are two of my friends and colleagues, great doctors who have both created very different but equally successful myopia management practices. I'd like to welcome Dr. Andrew Neukirch and Dr. Jennifer Lyerly. Excuse me, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. So just a little
Thanks
bit
for
about
having
you.
us.
Yes, of course. So I just want to give everyone a little bit of background about you guys. So Dr. Neukirch received his doctorate of optometry from Indiana University in 2008. In 2014, he was a recipient of the Vision Monday Optometric Business Innovator Award and was the recipient of the 2017 Illinois Optometric Association Young Optometrist of the Year Award. He frequently travels and lectures on topics of contact lenses and practice management, has been published in a number of optometric journals, and is presently involved in multiple myopia management clinical trials. He is the leading provider for myopia management in the North Shore of Chicago and is the leading prescriber of MiSight in the United States. So the top prescriber in the entire US. Way to go, Andrew. Dr. Jennifer Lyerly practices at True Vision Eye Care in Raleigh, North Carolina, with a focus on custom and specialty contact lenses and myopia management. She created Idolatry in 2011, a patient education website with over 50,000 page visits a month, and is the co-founder of Defocus Media. In 2017, she was recognized as a Southern College of Optometry's Young Alumni of the Year for her outreach in the profession, and she currently serves on the board of trustees at SCO. Wow, you guys are pretty amazing. So my goal for this evening is for you both to just be your authentic selves and tell us a little bit about your journey into myopia management, and then for us to get into the details about how you got started, maybe some things that you wish you had known, or just some advice that you can give people that are just trying to get started. And then I just want everyone after this to just feel fired up and inspired by what you guys do and what I do pretty much every day. So let's start with each of you just giving us a little bit about why you got into myopia management, how you got into it, and just kind of keeping in mind what you can tell us just to inspire people to get started wherever they're at in their journey. So how about Jen, you go first.
Well, I in optometry school, when we were coming along, myopia management wasn't a big focus. I feel like it was, we knew that it existed, but it was kind of one of those specialties that you would need to self-educate yourself about. And so when I first started practicing, I didn't really necessarily think that was something I would be pursuing. But I originally started working for a doctor that Dr. Neukirch really knows, Dr. Alicia Barnes, and she was doing myopia management in her practice. And she looked at me one day and she's like, oh, are you going to offer orthokeratology to this patient? And I said, oh, I hadn't considered it. It's not something that I really am fitting. And she was like, why wouldn't we offer whatever we can to keep a kid's vision from getting worse? And that mindset, like the moment she said that to me, the whole world opened up, and that completely revolutionized how I see optometry. And I practice that way every day thanks to her.
Thank you, Jen. What about you, Andrew?
So I got into it for kind of selfish reasons, I guess, if you would. When I bought my private practice back in 2011, and had seen the writing on the wall with vision plans and the poor reimbursement and the fact that it was just kind of going nowhere, and I was looking for ways to make our practice different and to create streams of revenue that were basically free of vision plans and increase that per patient revenue. Orthokeratology was just starting to kind of become kind of popular. You know, the ODs on Facebook was a newer thing, and there was a lot of buzz about it on there. I went to the Vision by Design meeting, the Academy of Orthokeratology, or AAOMC as it's now known, and really kind of got fired up, meeting a lot of other docs that were doing a lot of ortho-K there. I bought a corneal topographer that I couldn't afford yet at the time, and I fit one patient that entire year. The next year, I think I fit two. One of them was a staff member that wasn't even a paying customer, and then it did start to kind of snowball after that. There wasn't a lot of talk back then. This is 2011, 2012. Of myopia control or myopia management. The whole pitch was, hey, just no daytime glasses or contact lenses. But as we got more clinical research out there and we started to get our message correct, I just kind of discovered that, hey, wait a minute, these kids, they're not progressing. This is a wonderful service that we could be doing to provide for them. And so I went all out with it. And then, now I absolutely love this whole myopia management, myopia control thing, because it's not snake oil, and we're providing this absolutely wonderful service for these kids. Prior to COVID, we maybe had 150-ish, give or take, kids in mostly ortho-K, a handful in atropine, and then that's right when the MiSight lens got FDA approved, and over the shutdown over COVID, that's when I really kind of decided to double down on this whole myopia management thing and kind of create a specialty practice within a practice. Our numbers more than doubled over the course of the next year to 2 years right after that of kids that are in treatment. So been a wonderful ride so far, and it's only getting better.
I hear you. So let's maybe perhaps get into the details. One of the main questions I get are, how do you acquire your patient base? Not all of us regularly see kids, or we have things that may be prohibitive to seeing kids in our practices. So do you have any ideas or insights on how to expand the patient base to be able to have more kids in your practice? And do you feel that marketing is necessary? How about Jen, you start with this one.
So I definitely think that marketing is a key. And so word of mouth is your best marketing. We all know that. And so if you're fitting your patients, they're going to tell other patients, their parents are going to talk to each other. But social media is word of mouth marketing on steroids. And you do have to put money behind it. Free social media isn't going to do what it used to. So, Facebook and Instagram understand that they need to swipe your credit card if they want to exist. But you don't have to have a big budget to make a post go really far in your community and target who you want to do. So when we are paying for a social media post about myopia management, we'll go in and target parents, parenting groups, people that live in our local area right around the office, to make sure we're only feeding this information to parents who'd be interested in learning more about it. And it's been extremely successful for us.
What do you think, Andrew?
We built our practice all internally. It was all kids that were existing patients, existing families, and I basically kind of built up a little bit more of a pediatric practice from enjoying working with these kids and then asking people for referrals, not necessarily myopia management referrals, but for the first, almost 10 years that I was doing this, the only patients that I was getting to start myopia management were the ones that were already in our chair. These are the patients we already developed a rapport with. The parents trust us. There's a reason why they're coming back to us year after year. I do work with a number of other practices trying to build up their myopia management practice. And one thing I've discovered is that until you get at least a couple dozen patients in treatment, it's really not worth your time to, start outreaching to other providers or anything to generate referrals. You really need to kind of establish yourself as the local expert first before spending time to do that. But just like Jen, once we did kind of really once we were rocking and rolling and kind of had already kind of saturated our own patient base, we did use a number of social media ads. We found YouTube video to be very, very beneficial. You can very easily target very specific demographics of parents of kids of a very specific age, and we wouldn't get a lot of leads from it, but the leads we would get would almost come into the office over 50% of the time. So even if we were getting only 3 or 4 leads per month and spending $500, that was well worth it to us. There was a point where I was spending over $2,000 a year on YouTube, or $2,000 a month on YouTube ads per month, but we were getting at least 4 or 5 starts per month specifically from that campaign, and that was worth every penny.
Wow, that's really good news for me, because I've always heard that marketing for myopia management may not be that effective. And, like Jen was saying, word of mouth, but not traditional word of mouth, kind of thinking outside of the box and using the platforms that we have available to us. So thank you guys. I learned a lot there. So let's move on to scheduling. That's another really big point of contention amongst myopia management doctors. There's 2 schools of thought on how to start the whole process. So a consultation visit that's perhaps triaged by your front desk and they're scheduling a consultation versus a routine exam that just kind of encompasses a consultation visit. Do you guys have a protocol that works best in your practice? I'd love to hear both of your opinions on consultation versus routine exam with a consultation kind of built in. Maybe Andrew, you take this one first.
Yeah, sure. So the more I've done this, the more I've discovered that the less I talk, the higher our capture rate goes. Originally, I would spend, we would block off 45 minutes, have a separate consultation, have them come back with both parents, if that was applicable, and I would pull up all kinds of charts and graphs and talk about this and that. No, I mean, I've got my elevator pitch down to about 2 to 3 minutes or so. We no longer schedule a separate consultation unless it's a patient being referred to us from a provider specifically for myopia management. In those situations, we do try to make those appointments 45 minutes long, because a lot of times those appointments, both parents will be there and there will be more questions. They may have already educated themselves a bit and they'll have some intelligent questions, but the vast majority, no, it's just right at that comprehensive exam. The technician gives me a heads up like, hey, I think this is a good candidate for myopia management. That already gets my brain going. I'm ready to walk in the door to kind of speed through the parts of the exam that maybe aren't quite as pertinent, so I can have a little bit of extra time at the end to talk to the parents about myopia management. One of the nice things about some of the modalities of myopia management is that you can start them right then and there, like the MiSight lens or a distance center multifocal contact lens if you determine that's the right modality. And we don't even make them commit to the program. We put them in the lens right then and there, do the training, whatever, have them back in a week, send them home with the informed consents. And there's really kind of a no pressure situation that we get ourselves into. And when they come back for that 1 week follow-up, with almost always, they end up going forward with treatment.
Nice. Jennifer, do you do anything differently?
I have streamlined to be a lot more like you, Andrew, too, where less is more. And so in the course of the comprehensive exam, if that child is a myope, we are going to have a conversation about it, but I try to make it short and sweet. I look at mom and dad and I say, hey, back when we were kids, I just kept getting worse every year. We don't do that anymore. We can slow this down to keep the prescription as low as possible. I'm going to give you some information to take home and we can read about the choices. And we'll go from there. We'll follow up and kind of talk from there. So I try to keep it short. Sometimes more questions are asked, but if I feel like we're getting more into the weeds of things, I'll pull out the Brian Holden Vision Institute calculator and make that like the one thing I'm doing at the comprehensive exam to go deeper. But I'm avoiding a conversation on peripheral defocus and a bunch of stuff. Some patients do need that additional consult. They have more questions. They want to talk more about what your perceived differences are between orthokeratology and MiSight and talk through all of their options more in depth. And so we do sometimes have people come back for an additional consultation visit, but not necessarily will every patient need that additional mindset. I have a lot of patients who get an email from me after they leave with the choices available to them, and they make a decision right then and there on what they want to do, and I schedule them to do the actual MiSight fit or whatever it's going to be in the next day or two.
Sounds good. I found with me when I first started, I would like you guys were saying, say so much, and it just kind of confused things, it muddled things, and it just kind of made it was more difficult. I've also found less is more, and just making a recommendation or a prescription for, or what, you know, whatever I feel is best for the parent, instead of leaving it up for, I'm sorry, whatever I feel best for the patient, instead of leaving it up to the parent to decide, has been way more effective than just everyone looking at each other at the end. Okay, what do you think about this versus that, you know? So streamlining for sure is huge. So next topic, equipment. Equipment is a big one. A lot of our colleagues find equipment to be prohibitive or a barrier to getting started. And I preach all the time to my friends and colleagues that are hesitant to get started. You don't need a lot to get started. So Andrew, what would you say are the must-haves for getting started with myopia management today? Keeping in mind there may be many people listening that have that mindset that they just don't have what they need.
Yeah, so if you're going to take myopia management seriously, you absolutely have to have a corneal topographer. You can't do orthokeratology without a corneal topographer, and you really do need to be measuring axial length. You know, the cost of entry isn't huge. You could start with a used corneal topographer. You could probably find a decent one for under $10,000, and then for axial length, the easiest way to entry that's reliable. I'm not a big fan of the DGH scanner and those things. I like the optical solutions. You can get a used IOL master, like a second generation or third generation unit, for less than probably $6,000 or $7,000. At this point, if you absolutely have no patients in myopia management yet, you know, there is no safe level of myopia in my opinion. And so if you do not absolutely have any of the revenue available for these tools yet, I think it's still reasonable to start your patients in myopia, whatever level of myopia they happen to be, if you don't know the axial length yet. But once you've had those kids in treatment for a year or two, or you have at least a dozen kids in treatment, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to those patients to deliver that elevated standard of care and be able to offer, you know, the actual, and be able to track the axial length, which is the standard of care at this stage. I think we got kind of all agree.
Totally. Jen, do you have anything to add, or maybe any lesser thought of pieces of equipment or just items that have been helpful to you in practice?
Yeah. I totally agree. And we're actually in the market for a new axial length scan because our IOL master just died. So you can find ways to do axial length more cost effectively. But I do want to encourage doctors, if you don't have that yet, go ahead and get started. It doesn't have to hold you back. It's just a nice thing to add on because it's a true measurement of what you're trying to control. You're not trying to control their prescription. You're trying to control the lengthening of their eye. So you want to measure it. But you can get started without it and put that on your to-do list, I think. Another thing that is worth considering having is a corneal pachymetry, which if you have OCT, I mean, you probably have this already. You may be surprised to find some sneaky early keratoconus patients hiding in your practice that look like progressive myopes. That's how they're going to start out. And always, before you're going to do orthokeratology, check that pachymetry, because we don't want to necessarily do orthokeratology on a keratoconus at-risk eye. So,
thank you, Jen. That's a really good point. All right, moving on to staffing. So in the current climate, you know, just keeping enough staff is difficult. There's in many offices a lot of turnover, not as much loyalty as we would like. So when we are adding new services, new specialties, it's kind of tricky to be in the sweet spot of not being too overstaffed or understaffed. Did you guys have any challenges with that? Did you create any new positions when you started these new services in your practices? What are your thoughts on that, Jen?
We are, like most optometry offices, I think right now, chronically understaffed. So we have not had the luxury really of like thinking about creating a whole new position around this. There was a small point in time where we did have a really excellent technician who was triaging all of our keratoconus, scleral fits, custom RGP orders, myopia control. She was like our contact lens specialist tech, and it was amazing. And now she's a flight attendant for Delta. And so we do not have that. But one problem solver that maybe you guys should consider is a virtual assistant, because a lot of communication to parents about information can be sent via email. And if you're having a hard time hiring, we have found our virtual assistant is Brian's great. Highly recommend.
And the virtual assistant I've heard is very shockingly affordable. Is that what you're finding as well?
Yes, more affordable probably than hiring someone in your local community. These are people who are very well educated, can do amazing work, and they're working from overseas typically.
Thank you. I see Andrew struggling a little bit in the background.
Just stay in room. I gotta have you come
I'm getting kicked out here, so I'll be back.
Okay. All right. So no, I hear you. So the virtual assistant thing, how do you come about? How do you find these?
So there are services. It was actually through IDOC, we're IDOC members, that we had learned about these virtual assistant groups. And I do not remember right now the name of the group that we're using, or I would share it. It's like leaving my mind. But our virtual assistant is based in the Philippines, and he logs in at nighttime for him, which is daytime for us. And he has helped with all sorts of remote administrative help, emailing patients prior authorizations. He can do some insurance and scheduling stuff. It's really, really incredible how helpful that assistant has been, to the point where, may even be worth for some offices considering having multiple virtual assistants.
Seriously. And did you have to specifically train them in the ins and outs of myopia management, just like you would any other staff member?
So one thing about the virtual, just with overseas phone calls, they're not physically ever talking to a patient on the phone, but we've pre-written the emails, pre-written the communication, and I just send Ryan a message like, shoot this email to this patient, and it sends out. And then if there is a question coming back, I'll usually be the one to answer from there.
Got it. So Andrew, we were just finishing up the conversation on the virtual assistant. Did you have any other comments on staffing, how to manage the perfect balance of having the right amount of staff?
Yeah, I made the mistake of just kind of taking everything on myself for many, many years. And I was doing the ortho K trainings because our staff would do our regular contact lens trainings and whatnot. But for whatever reason, I don't know, I just didn't feel that comfortable training staff doing it. And that was a big misstep. But in the last couple of years, no, I've now got that one super staff member that is always with me when I'm doing these things. And then she can basically communicate in almost the same way, because she's heard me do it 100 times now at this point, and can basically answer any questions. And that way, when patients call in with any questions, or even some potential new patient, more often than not, she can answer 95% of any questions that they might have.
So that person that's in the office that you trust with those sorts of conversations, how did you get her to the point where she felt so confident and empowered to have these conversations?
But just basically grabbing her every time I was about to have that myopia management conversation or whatever. And her name's Kaylee, and I would be like, hey, where's Kaylee? Go grab Kaylee real quick or whatever. And she'd come in and just listen to that conversation. And so she just picked it all up from being with me. And that's at the end of the day, that's how I became a better doctor as well, shadowing other practitioners and basically copying what I liked that they were doing.
I hear you. So Andrew, earlier you mentioned, I think you called it informed consent. Do you guys have those in place for myopia management in general, or specific categories of management? How do you guys tackle that? Because some practices feel that it's a little too serious. It kind of takes some of the doctoring out. What are your thoughts on the informed consent process?
We try to make it as simple as possible. Our informed consent agreement is only 3 pages long. It reads kind of almost like a list of frequently asked questions, if you will. And we only offer one informed consent agreement for all myopia management. So it encompasses everything. It's the same cost for everything. Whatever the patient needs, the patient gets, whether it's combination therapy, whether it's MiSight, whether that's just atropine, whatever it happens to be. Again, we just try to keep it as absolutely simple as possible. And then we also, the one thing we've learned with the informed consents over time too, is that, patients see that these treatments work, and they usually keep their kids in treatment. And so we tell them, it's now appropriate to discontinue this or whatever, or we could consider washing them out, whatever it happens to be. And so we don't commit them to any more than that very first year of treatment. They can basically kind of drop out at any time. And I don't believe we've ever had a child drop out in that very first year of treatment ever, or at least even want to.
And then do you guys do anything different in your practice?
We do. We hand, just like you're doing, Andrew, set up all of our myopia management options as a program. You're enrolling in a program with a suite of visits included in that, and we find that to be more successful than having a person pay at each individual visit. This only works if you're committing to the full amount of care. And so because of that program kind of schedule, I think having an informed consent about what the program entails and what this cost is including is appropriate. And we do it for our scleral lens programs as well. So it's something we do across multiple parts of our practice.
Nice. All right. Well, you guys were so amazing. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from my colleagues, but especially people like you that are in the trenches doing myopia management every day. So maybe if you guys could just think of a couple parting words of wisdom for anyone that is trying to get started or to elevate their practices, what do you have to say to the person considering and the person that is just trying to take their practice to the next level? Maybe Andrew, you can go first.
Find your mentor. Find someone ideally that's relatively close to you. The thing is, all of us that do a lot of this, we're huge nerds when it comes to myopia management. We love talking about it. We love educating our colleagues on it. We love educating our patients and kids on it as well too. We love talking about it. So anyone that's ever interested in doing this, I love having them come to the office. Like, hey, come spend a day with me. I almost guarantee you, anyone that's doing a lot of it in your area would love to have you as well too. And really, that one day of shadowing someone that's doing a lot of this, just to pick up on the little things that they're doing, will really, really elevate your practice.
I completely agree. I couldn't have done it without my mentor either. And there's a ton of people who are out there to be open and mentoring you guys. You mentioned Vision by Design earlier as a conference. If you really want to get your feet wet, like that is a can't miss conference to go to. You will learn so much and feel so empowered to start offering in your practice if you want to add orthokeratology especially. My other advice is to perfectionists like me that sometimes get in their head about like, is this good enough? Have I done all I can do? Do I need to keep tinkering with these lenses? Keep in mind when you do myopia management that you are slowing down prescription and not correcting vision. And yes, there's vision enhancement with it, but just because someone's 20/25 and is getting a slowed down myopia management effect, that is a good result. I sometimes have to remind myself of that when I've got this very happy orthokeratology patient and she's seeing 20/25 letters and I feel like mom's like, oh, but she didn't get the 20/20 letters. There's nothing left to change about the lenses. They're a perfect fit. There's no there's nothing to do. And you have to be empowered to say, this is the perfect result. And in fact, many studies suggest a soft 20/20 minus or 20/25, you get even better myopia management control results. So keep that in mind with what your actual goal is when you're doing myopia management. If you were just fitting for clarity, that's not the lens you would be fitting. So
thank you both so much for your words of wisdom, for your time, spending a little bit of your evening with me. Andrew, taking a little time away from your holiday party. I appreciate that. So
I found the cafeteria.
Oh, okay. I like the new venue. So to our audience, thank you so much for listening. Myopia management is so much fun. It's a great part of all of our days. And I just encourage you all just to start with one family, one patient, just get in there and just start somewhere. It doesn't matter where, how big, how small, just try. You will be so impressed on the impact you can have on that patient and on their lives. So happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And until next time, good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.